course, and we love her. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. We are back and lots to talk about tonight. So, Kenny, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been kind of a weird weekend in Cleveland. You change your name after. Yeah. It's been, I think, 105 years. So it's interesting because I don't really listen to a lot of Cleveland radio because I'm just not really in that often.
Right.
But it was interesting because it kind of has a bit of a mixed reaction because obviously like there's a lot of like it's different when you're like I can only imagine how crazy it would be if like the Yankees or Mets changed their name.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But I think also it fits the city really well. I could go on for a while with it, but I'll just say I think I like the name Guardians because it fits Cleveland. And it's like one of those like you don't fully get it unless you're here. And
okay.
I think that's kind of cool.
Okay. Okay. I kind of liked I like the logo and everything. But I'm wondering what's taking the Washington football team so long. I mean, if the Indians got this done in a year and they spoke to 40-something thousand fans and everything. I mean, why? What's holding up? What's the hold over Washington?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think they like to be petty. Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, another year as the Washington football team. That's weird. Yeah, I kind of like I like the name. But let's get into some of the games here. Well, first, let me ask you a question. Have you watched any of the Olympics yet?
No, I'm afraid to watch the basketball now because they've looked pretty bad. But I haven't really watched any of
team. It's like the best players. Yeah, it's a strange team. It's like the best players aren't really playing. Except Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum. There's this kind of it's almost like the second team of all-stars. But I think they'll rise up. They'll take it. I think. But I haven't gotten into the Olympics yet. I'm going to try this week to see if I can sit there for a couple of hours and watch some stuff at night.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in baseball. Oh, I should have looked this up before. But it was interesting because there are several guys that it's like, oh, I didn't know you were going to be on the Olympic team.
Yeah.
We've talked about some of the American guys, but another one is your boy, Oliver Perez.
Oliver Perez is on the Olympic team?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, on the American Olympic team?
He's with Mexico.
Okay.
Oh, here's another one. Your boy Jose Batista's with the Dominican Republic.
Well, he probably because he wasn't hitting well in his last year there, the Mets and Phillies, but he might be good for a home run or two in that competition.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Masahiro Tanaka for Japan.
Really? Okay.
Adrian Gonzalez also from Mexico.
Adrian Gonzalez, boy, we're gonna talk about that, right? Players that flamed out. Man, his last year was brutal. His last couple of years, actually. Yeah.
Ian Kinsler, Israel.
Ian Kinsler's with Israel. Wow. Ian Kinsler was a really good player. Yeah.
Yeah. And another one, I'm surprised he's not on a team. Melky Cabrera is with also Dominican. So a lot of interesting names.
I suspect Melky could still hit. I'm surprised he's not on a team. I think he's one of those guys that would hit into his like late 30s, but I'm surprised he's not on a team. So let's switch gears. So we're gonna both watch the Olympics, so we can talk a little bit about it next week. I like the baseball, swimming. I mean, there's a lot of drama. The track hasn't started yet, but that'll come up. And I always preferred the Summer Olympics over the Winter Olympics. But anyway, let's talk about your Yankees, man. Heartbreaking 4-game series here. They could have taken 3 out of 4. Instead, the Sox took 3 out of 4. So talk to us. What's What's your take here? Where do the Yankees go from here?
Well, I think it's interesting because I forgot exactly how someone phrased it, but essentially it's like this team tends to continue to rip your heart out because it seems like every single time they're like just getting on a roll, every time they have like arguably the best win of the season, they followed up with something that's just absolutely dreadful. And honestly, and I feel like I've said this probably multiple times this year, I think that you can make an argument that their loss on Sunday was their worst loss of the season. Because
Yeah,
like you were 4-0, have a guy that's pitching a no hitter into the eighth inning. You can't lose that game. Um, I don't know if it's just because Aaron Boone kept in Loizaga too long. I don't know if it's like the Red Sox figured out how to hit, but man, that one I think was probably the worst one. Not to mention Thursday, where they had the lead. Sessa threw like I think 5 pitches in the eighth. To me, I would have just gone with him in the ninth inning because they didn't have Chapman available.
right.
Just go with the guy, see what he has, and maybe have like someone backing him up in the bullpen. Honestly, I think he probably would have nailed it down. Sessa does multiple innings all the time, and then of course they couldn't seal the deal in the ninth. And then in the 10th inning, the Red Sox don't record a hit and they score 2 runs and win the game.
Yeah, that's brutal.
And like
Yeah,
I could go on a rant about the extra inning rule there, but I don't think it would have made much of a difference. And honestly,
yeah,
the Yankees ended up optioning the guy that couldn't find the plate anyway.
yeah.
So
He's throwing wild pitches all
um,
over the place. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but I think it's still kind of a weird spot for this team. Because I look and if they were to sweep the Rays, not saying that that would happen, but if they were, I I don't know. Over this stretch to start off the All-Star break, like they would have won 6 out of their last 9. And they're still like kind of in the wild card hunt, but it seems like there's a clear top 5 in the AL. You have the Rays, the Red Sox, the White Sox, the Astros, and the A's.
yeah,
Mariners are a step back. The Yankees seem like they're a step back. So it'll be hard to try to overcome any of those teams to make the playoffs. Um, but I don't really see what the Yankees are doing as far as making moves. I saw John Heyman tweeted out that they've made an offer for Trevor Story. He didn't say what it was or what that looks like, but like I don't know. Part of me says that you can't have the same 5 in this lineup when everyone's healthy next year. When you have these many power hitters, these many right-handed power hitters that really don't do much else than hit home runs, it doesn't seem like it works. Like I think analytically it's supposed to, but in theory it really hasn't. And
yeah,
like this last week when everyone went on the COVID list, it seemed like this team had a whole new element of like actually running bases, seeing guys go from first to third on a single. Greg Allen is stealing second base, which like I think I saw that the Yankees had 5 stolen bases in 3 games, and they only had 5 stolen bases in their previous 22. So like
yeah,
I don't know what that's gonna look like. Um, but I don't really know where they go from here. I think
yeah,
you have to consider selling because let's say if you were to try to trade a guy like I hate saying it, but a guy like Gleyber Torres, although his stock really isn't that high right now,
right.
he's a long-term controlled. He hit 38 home runs 2 years ago. He plays a decent shortstop, not great, but you could probably get something for him, especially since like you have a lot of shortstops that are free agents in at the end of the year. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I wouldn't trade Gleyber Torres. I would try to get because it's in his position more second base, right? It's his natural position, and isn't that
Yeah,
where they would probably want him at? So if you got Trevor Story and you didn't have to give him up, now you're talking, and I don't know what you do with LeMahieu, with Boyd eventually coming back, right? I mean, you put LeMahieu at first base. He's
yeah,
played there before. I, Torres, I mean, I think he's out of all of the Yankees, I think he has the best potential. I think he's a 5 tool player, and so I'm not sure I would trade him. If I was to trade him, it'd probably be for me in the off season where I can. You know, it seems like these deals happen so fast at the trading deadline that sometimes it's not a lot of value that comes back. Although you never know how they turn out, right? We could probably go do a whole podcast on how many minor leaguers got traded at the deadline. They became stars, with other teams. But
Yeah.
the Yankees are in a tough spot right now. But here's the thing: I know we're heading into August this week. There's still a lot of baseball left. What's clogging it up for the Yankees, I think, a little bit, and it's like you said, it's good and bad because they're on the periphery here. But you got the 2 really good teams in the East, and you got the 2 really good teams in the West. So chances are, there's no wild card that's coming out of the Central more than likely, unless the Indians get crazy hot. So it's really, really hard, for them. But I've never known Brian Cashman to sell at the trading deadline. I don't think he'll start now, but them making a move for an impact player is going to be very, very difficult, because the Yankees, unfortunately, have also a lot of guys. And I know why you said Gleyber Torres, because he's one of the guys that other teams will want. No offense. Nobody's going to want Mike Stanton, not with his contract. And he's having just a thoroughly mediocre year. I saw the stats yesterday when he came up in the 9th inning. He's got 14 homers and 46 RBIs or something like that. I mean, so he's one of those guys that unfortunately has gotten old quick. But Torres is the guy you get the most for. But now Urshela is also a really good player that probably other teams would want. So the Yankees just don't have a lot of guys out now that other teams will want. You're not going to trade Aaron Judge, and you're probably not going to trade LeMahieu. I don't think other teams will even want Gary Sanchez. I mean, he's just too up and down. So I don't know. They're in a tough spot, but it's still a lot of baseball. This is not the end of August. This is the end of July. So we've seen teams just get hot those last couple of months and get on a roll. And I mean, the Yankees can get hot. So we'll see.
And they're also 3.5 out of the second wild card spot behind Oakland. So that could change very quickly.
Yeah, and listen, and the Astros and the A's will probably be beating each other up, in August and September. So you just never know. So I think it's interesting. It is a weird team. Those are just odd losses. To have a no-hitter into the 8th inning and you're leading 4-0 and then you lose. And that game was on national TV yesterday too, because I turned to 39 because I knew Ron Darling had said the day before, I'm doing the Yankees Red Sox, or 2 days before. And I said, oh, chances are it's not on TBS. And sure enough, I turned, it's the blank screen on TBS. But
of course.
It was definitely, it was definitely national TV. So that's a tough way to lose on national TV like that too. We'll turn to the Mets real quick. We don't spend a ton of time on the Mets because the Mets are really even though they're still in first place, they lost the first game in the doubleheader today. They're so up and down. They're just mediocre. They just haven't put everything together yet. I mean, Alonso has gone on a nice roll here, and he's gotten hot, but they just haven't put anything. I mean, Rich Hill, he did okay. Yesterday they wound up winning the game. Good offense. Good offense coming back. But I'm a little worried about Taijuan Walker. He's not been good his last maybe 4 starts. Since that Yankee one that you had texted me about, something special's going. That was like his last really good start. And that was July 3rd, if I remember right, because we were dropping on Maryland off in the city, and you had texted me. But I think the Mets are going to be okay. I think they'll take 3 out of the 5 in this series with the Braves, and they'll kind of hold them off a little bit. I'd like to see the Mets get 10, 15 games over 500, but they just can't seem to get on a good hot streak where they win 5, 6, 7 games in a row. They'll take these series. I mean, I'll take it. They they took 2 out of 3 from the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays are another one of those really head scratching teams that has an enormous amount of talent, but their bullpen stinks.
Yeah.
And you would think they would get the pitching to go along with that hitting. So it's going to be baseball's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be an exciting next couple of months. Hey, so we'll switch gears. We didn't talk about the Milwaukee Bucks winning the NBA championship. I mean, what was your final thoughts there? Yeah, I have to say, I did call it. That they were going to make it a series.
It. I'll give you that.
When it was 2-0. I just felt like but Giannis, unbelievable. 50 games in the clinching game. Wrap it up for us. Talk about the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I think first of all, we'll stay positive. I don't want to talk about the Suns too much because I do feel really bad for Chris Paul.
So do I.
I mean, guy gets that close, but like there was a certain point in the fourth quarter, probably about like 5 or 6 minutes in, or 5 or 6 minutes like left in the fourth quarter, you can kind of tell they checked out a little bit. The game was still pretty close. They were kind of in it, but they were arguing every single foul call. They started doing like really dumb, chippy fouls. And really that's the point where I knew like, okay, yeah, Milwaukee's got this. But I really want to focus on Giannis because I feel like what Giannis did was very incredible. Like, first of all, let's go back to game 1 where he was a game time decision and we thought maybe we would see him, maybe we wouldn't. Amazing. And he went from that to having 3 different 40-plus point games. And also he had 50 points in a closeout game, which only someone has tied it. No one's ever gotten more points in an actual closeout game. You can make the argument that it was like the best closeout game in finals history.
Yeah.
Probably not, because I would still say maybe LeBron in 2016 where he had like a 40-point triple-double, but whatever. I think what really inspires me about Giannis is how unconventional he is, because he's not your prototypical superstar. First of all, he can't shoot in a league where it's really important to shoot. All of the visiting teams trolling him by counting on the free throw line. Like, guy does not have a great shot in a shooter's league, but yet he still scored 50 points. And he's just like, and also as a star, like you look at guys like LeBron, you look at guys like Damian Lillard, you look at guys like Kevin Durant sometimes, like a lot of times they kind of get a little bit of like that cockiness. And really, you never see that with Giannis. And then obviously the whole like not deciding to join a super team, because I mean, he could have easily said, well, I'm not going to sign a super max and then go to Golden State. Like, imagine him with Steph Curry. Like, that team would be unstoppable.
Yeah.
But I think it also goes to show you, like,
a relatively small market. You're right.
Yeah. And like, I think a lot of that goes to show you that, like, first of all, maybe going to a super team isn't the way that you have to go. Maybe you should come to the Knicks. But I think more importantly, when I was thinking about this on Wednesday, Thursday, a Bible story came to mind. Yeah. Right when David was about to face off against Goliath, he goes to King Saul and says, I'm going to go and fight this giant. And King Saul tries to give him his armor. And David refused and used a very unconventional method of 5 smooth stones and a slingshot. And I think it kind of goes to show you, like, sometimes where God will have you thrive isn't where other people expect you to thrive or where you're supposed to thrive in like the traditional sense. I actually talked about this on my nonprofit podcast. Like, a lot of times people will try to fit you in a specific mold, but like if Giannis was trying to fit in a specific mold, we'd call him an overrated star that has pretty good defense. Yeah. But like in reality, when he was himself, when he attacked the paint, when he kind of got his life together on the free throw line. I think, what was it, 15 of 16 or something like that in the
Yeah,
final
he
close
finished
out.
up really good. Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's a good message to say, like, be yourself.
I think you nailed it, man. I gotta tell you, I will add just one thing to what you said, and I said this last week. I think that series turned in Game 3. Uh, Suns up 17, more than midway. It was probably about 5 minutes left in the second quarter, so still relatively early, but all the momentum was their way, and something. Then the Bucks just woke up defensively, and they made a run at the half, and then the second half they just blitzed them, man, and that to me was just the turn. The Suns were just scratching their head at the end of that Game 3, because they dominated for the first quarter and a half and then some. And so I just think that was where I said, the Bucks really are going to get back into this, because you could just tell the body language and everything with the Suns. I had a little fun for you. The last time they won was 50 years ago. I remember watching that series, because Oscar Robertson was on the Bucks, and the two conference finals was the Bucks and the Lakers. The Bucks used to be in the West, and so it was Kareem, who was Lou Alcindor then, against Wilt Chamberlain. Oscar Robertson against Jerry West. Oscar Robertson was past his prime, but he could still play. And everyone thought the Lakers was going to win that series, and the Bucks beat them 4-1. And if you look up the games, they weren't even close. The Bucks kind of blitzed them in the Western Finals. But the Eastern Finals was the heartbreaker. That was the Washington Bullets beating our Knicks 7 games, 4-3. And Bill Bradley missed a shot at the buzzer in Game 7. It was a close series. The Bullets won by 1 point in Game 7, and then they got swept in the finals by the Bucks. But the Bullets had Earl Monroe, who in another year or two joined the Knicks. Actually, I think the next year he got traded to the Knicks. A guy named Archie Clark, who was a great scorer. Wes Unseld, who I think they just hired Wes Unseld Jr., right, to be their coach. I think Washington, the Wizards.
Oh.
Yeah, Wes Unseld. Because Wes Unseld Sr. died, I think, a year or two ago. So they were a tough team. They didn't have Elvin Hayes just yet. They went on a great run later in the 70s with Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld, the Bullets back then. But they got to the finals that year, and the Bucks swept them. That was the last time we thought the Bucks was going to be back there every year. They were in the finals again in '74, but they lost in 7 games to the Celtics.
Okay.
All right. It was a great final. I thought it was a great NBA playoffs. A lot of great moments, and hopefully some of these teams get some rest so that they can start the regular season on time. This time around, because it still was a little bit weird watching the finals in like mid to late July. So
yeah.
All right, let's have some fun. And we're not. This is the positive tip, so we're not killing these guys. But I brought up a topic to you. Who are some players, and it was mostly baseball. I was only baseball I came up with. Players that flamed out really fast, that had maybe 3 or 4 just spectacular years, and they flamed out really fast. Some of it was because of injury, right? And so I'll give you mine first, and that was Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly had probably 4 or 5 of some of the best years that you've seen. Wasn't a big home run hitter anyway, but man, can he hit. And he could hit gap to gap. I think he led the league in hitting a couple of times during that period. And then it wasn't one injury. He just had this debilitating back condition. Larry Bird, very similar, later in his career. And Mattingly then he lost all of his power. He was never a big home run hitter anyway, but then he lost all of his power, and he became a thoroughly mediocre hitter. He was always a great first baseman, fielding first baseman. And he retired in 95, and he was still, after the 95, he finally got to the playoffs that year. They lost to Seattle. But he was on some really good teams, him and Dave Winfield in the 80s, Ricky Henderson, but they never seemed to get over the hump that those Yankee teams in the 80s. But if he hadn't gotten hurt, he'd definitely be in the Hall of Fame. So Don Mattingly is one of mine. Give us one of yours.
All right. One that I have here is he did win an MVP, and that's Josh Hamilton.
Wow. Man, Josh
I'll
Hamilton.
read off a few of these. Yeah.
Year.
Yeah. This is the year he won the MVP, 2010 with Texas. He batted .359.
Oh
32 home runs, 100 RBIs. His batting average and his OPS both led the majors. He had a .633 slugging, which that's really good. But then also, listen to this is a 5-year stretch for him. 304, 32, and 130. It looks like that's 2008. He also had the big home run derby. He didn't win it, but he
was in Yankee Stadium, right? He was hitting balls near the scoreboard.
Yeah, he was hitting it off the back facade and stuff.
Yeah,
but
unbelievable.
Played in 89 games in 2009, batted .268, 1054. So he was clearly hurt that year. I gave you the 2010. 2011, also still at Texas, 298, 25, and 94. So a little bit down. Still made the All-Star team. But then also, listen to this 2012. 285, which isn't great. 43 home runs and 128 RBIs.
Wow. That's just sick.
But then the next couple of years, this is what he does for home runs. 21, 10, and 8. And then he was done.
Wow. So two things with him, right? And, he had a terrible drug and drinking problem, right? But then the other, and this is terrible. Do you remember this? When there was a fan that was reaching for a home run and Hamilton was there. He missed it. The fan reached for it, but he fell and he hit his head and he died the next day. And Hamilton never got over that. He said if it had just been different, if he had caught it, because he made some spectacular catches too, in his career in the outfield. I mean, he was a great arm. I mean, he's definitely a 5-tool player, but that's probably actually a better example than Don Mattingly, but very tragic. But I was reading that these guys' life together now, and he's been drug free for a while. No, he hasn't. He had another issue.
He had another relapse. He's actually facing charges for assault on his oldest daughter now. This is kind of recent though.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Oh, that's sad. So you gotta pray for him, because baseball, I mean, in the scope of things, really means nothing, right? A guy's life. All right, so here's my next one, and I'm gonna ask you to read a couple of the stats of the years I sent you. Nomar Garciaparra. I mean, so that was in the era with Derek Jeter, A-Rod, and him were all shortstops at the time, and there was always this debate on who was better. And certainly A-Rod went on to have a long, great career, and Jeter went on, obviously, to have a long, great career. What stands out with Nomar for me, though, is how the Red Sox traded him at the trading deadline in 2004. They traded him to the Cubs, right? And I felt so bad for the guy. I mean, who knew that they would win the championship that year? But after they won, I was one of the first things that ran through my mind. I'm like, man, Garciaparra, who was on the team for a long time, didn't get to reap in this championship. But read a couple of his years.
All right, so I'll read 99 first. Led the league, 357 batting average, 27 home runs, and 104 RBIs. And this is a shortstop. 2000, he hit 372. 21 home runs, 96 RBIs, and also 51 doubles, just to kind of add that in.
51 double. Wow.
Also,
Wow.
I'm going to point this out because it's just kind of one of those weird, interesting stats. He led the league in intentional walks that year with 20 in 2000, where you got guys like Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire and guys like that.
Yeah, teams were afraid of him, man.
Yeah. 2002, 310, 24 home runs, 120 RBIs, and 56 doubles. That also led the league.
My goodness. Wow. You know, it seems like I think he had one really good year with the Dodgers, if I'm not mistaken, right? But with the Cubs, I don't think he did much. But he had one good year with the Dodgers, and it wasn't really injuries with him. I don't know what happened to him. You know, he just kind of. I mean, and he gambled with. He turned down that contract. You always talked about that, and he never got paid the way he thought he would. You know, he wound up going like on these year-to-year contracts, and he kind of just faded away. You know, and he was on a couple of good Dodger teams that, you know, back then the Dodgers just couldn't get over the hump to, you know, get past the Phillies, and, you know, they seemed like they played them every year, or the Cardinals. They couldn't get to the World Series, it seemed like. But
Giants
he's just
too.
He went to the Giants also, right? Yeah.
The Giants just in general. They couldn't get the Dodgers. Yeah.
All right, give us another one.
All right. This one kind of fits more the Cleveland area, and that's Grady Sizemore.
Wow, haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah. What's interesting about him too, I'll read off. This is a 3-year stretch. He was an all-star in each of these years. First of all, I think it's funny. In 2006 and 2007, the guy played in every single game.
Wow. Yeah.
Which, like, that he really never did again. So 2006, he batted .290, 28 home runs, 76 RBIs, 53 doubles, which led the league, and 134 runs scored, which also led the league.
Wow.
2007. Yeah. 2007, 277. He had a 390 on base percentage, so almost on base 40% of the time.
Wow.
24 home runs, 78 RBIs. And then also played every single day. He was in center field every day for the Indians. And then 2008, where he was also on the All-Star team, 268, a little bit lower, with 33 home runs and 90 RBIs.
Wow.
Also, each of these years, he had over 740 plate appearances. So, guy is consistently out there. And then after that, he only played 3 more seasons, 106 games in 2009, 248, so a huge drop-off, 1864. 2010, he batted .211 in 33 games, no home runs, 13 RBIs. And then in 2011, 224, 10 home runs, 32 RBIs in 71 games. And then he did not make the majors until 2014, bounced around with the Red Sox and Phillies, and then also with Tampa for a hot second. So
he had a really bad leg injury, if I remember right? I thought he had a really bad leg injury. He was the guy on those teams, though, man. He made that team go. I mean, you know, you had Alomar and, you know, Manny was on some of those teams, but Sizemore was the one, man. That year that he had a 400, almost 40% of the time he was on base, being up like 700 times, not missing a day. I mean, that was just spectacular. Not many players could do that, you know. All right, I'm gonna give you one more. And I want you to look him up for 05, 06, 09, and 10. And that would be one Jason Bay.
Oh, your boy.
I felt so bad for him, man. I mean, he had these great years with the Pirates first. And then that '09 year, I want you to read that one with the Red Sox was just spectacular. That's what prompted him to get the big contract with the Mets. And then you'll see that first year with the Mets in 2010, and it never really got better. Just like we know Francisco Lindor is going to get better, Beltran got better. All these guys sometimes struggle their first year. Piazza struggled his first couple of months, But Jason Bay and Carlos Villagra, Roberto Alomar, some of these guys, they never got better. But Jason Bay was probably, unfortunately, the worst out of the bunch. So go ahead, read his numbers in 05, 06, and 09.
All right, 2005. He played 162 games. He batted .306, 402 on base, 559 slugging. Those are all amazing numbers. People would love that nowadays. 32 home runs and 101 RBIs and 21 stolen bases.
That's a great year. And with the Pirates, who weren't that good, I think, back then. But that's a great year. All right, what, 06?
06 in 159 games, so only sitting out 286, 396, 532. So still almost a 400 on base percentage. 35 home runs, 109 RBIs. And let's see, 11 stolen bases. So that's a little down, but
right.
But that's still a really good year.
And how about that year with the Red Sox? The full year, because I think he got traded at the deadline, then he played the full year the next year.
Yeah, so 2009, which he was an all-star that year as well. 267, 384, 537, 36 home runs, and 119 RBIs.
I mean, and then read 2010.
In 95 games, 259, 6 home runs, and 47 RBIs.
And it didn't get better. It really didn't get better those next couple of years until the Mets finally put him out of his misery. I hate to point that out with positive tip, but boy, oh boy, that poor guy. I felt bad. I mean, the fans booed him badly too. I felt bad. He lost confidence totally in himself. It seemed more mental than physical to him. Now, that first year, I'll say he had these little injuries and stuff like that. But this was a guy, as you said, he was playing in just about every game for years with the Pirates, and then with the Red Sox and the Mets. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't New York, because then when he went to Seattle, he was terrible too. And next thing you know, he was out of baseball, and he was still pretty young. He was like in his very early 30s. All right, we have time for one more. Give us one more.
All right, and just as a fun fact, he hit 26 home runs in his entire Mets career, which spans over 3 seasons.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
the last one I'll give you. Also kind of from the same era. He really started out big. He was actually also part of a very big trade, and that's Dontrelle Willis.
Wow. Yeah. Miguel Cabrera trade. Yeah.
So, yep. I'll read off his 2 All-Star years here. So in 2003, this was his first year. He won Rookie of the Year, 14-6 with a 3.30 ERA.
Good year.
Also had 142 strikeouts. And this is like a rookie season. So really good. 2005, also this was a bad Marlins. 2003, I mean, they won the World Series. But 2005 was not a good Marlins team. 22-10 with a 2.63 ERA. He had 7 complete games with 5 complete game shutouts.
Wow.
Both of those led the league.
Yeah.
Also 170 strikeouts. Do you know who won the Cy Young that year? Because it wasn't him.
What year is this?
2005.
I want to say maybe Kershaw.
Let's see.
Maybe.
Chris Carpenter won it that year.
Chris
but
Carpenter,
I don't know why.
Yeah. Chris Carpenter was a good pitcher, but yeah.
Let me just read off Chris Carpenter's stats in the same year. 21-5. So
Good year.
That probably was there. He had a 2.83 ERA where Willis had 2.63. He
Right.
had 7 complete games with 4 complete game shutouts. So Dontrell had 1 more. He also had 213 strikeouts. So he almost had like 50 more strikeouts.
Yeah.
It's close. I still would have given it to Dontrell, but
Yeah. And the Cardinals got to the World Series that year, I think, right?
yeah, they were a good team.
Yeah.
The Marlins weren't, but they were a good
Right.
team.
Right.
2006, he's 12-12 with a 3.87 ERA, so he's still pretty good. 2007, 10-15 with a 5.17 ERA.
Yeah.
And then he gets traded to Detroit.
Right.
And only starts in 8 games. I believe that was an injury season. 0-2, 938. 2009, 1-4 with a 7.49 ERA and 7 starts.
Wow.
And then went to Arizona for a year. It was bad. Cincinnati for a year. It was bad there too. So
I didn't even realize
just
that
kind
he
of
was in
as
Minnesota and Cincinnati. Wow.
I didn't know either, honestly. Well, Arizona, he started 5 games, and then got into a 6th one. And Cincinnati, he pitched in 13 games. I think I do remember him in Cincinnati now I'm thinking about it. But
Yeah.
he had a 3.78 ERA in 5 years with the Marlins, 162 starts, so pretty good amount.
Yeah.
And then with Detroit, Arizona, and Cincinnati, 6.86, 6.85, and 5 ERA. So, yeah,
Poor guy.
he kind of fell off very quickly.
He really did, but he had some arm issues too, right? I think he had a couple of arm issues as well. He retired very early. I almost want to say he could possibly still be pitching. Especially a lefty. They tend to go a little longer. Well,
Yeah.
listen. Speaking of going long, we're at 42 minutes, so we got to wrap up. But this has been a lot of fun. We could probably talk about more folks next week, but I think we'll get into a couple other topics. But let me get the music on here, and you can take us home with the hopes that the Yankees have a really big week. I'm pulling for it. So take us home there, Kenny.
All right, this is Kenny Squared N
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. Let's hope for a sweep. At least 2 out of 3, but really a sweep would be nice.
Big week.
We'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, here we go.
Talk to you later. Got to be a big week.